Yo, what up, Toshi here. So I have to whisper in this video because I am not home and it's very late at the time of my recording of this video. But in today's video, we're going to be going over all the 2.1 characters who you should roll for from the patch, because you probably just watched the live stream and unlike me, you've been saving, you've been doing your due diligence, and you are ready to pull for a new character. So in this video, I will help you decide which character you should roll for. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Now let's start off with the very first character. This is the most anticipated character of patch 2.1 and it's for obvious reasons. The lightning purple child of Hoyoverse games, Raiden Shogun, Raiden Mei, and now in Honkai Star, Acheron. She's going to be an amazing lightning damage dealer. I mean, we all know that at this point. She's going to be one of the best characters in the game at the time of her arrival, and if not, very soon after. She doesn't seem to have any best in slot supports, like for instance think of Sparkle and Jing, think of Sparkle and Seal, and think of like Topaz and Dr. Ratio. In due time, I'm sure she'll get her best dedicated support and she'll be the most strong character in the game. I have no doubt about that. If you want a character that has a lot of potential, then I would definitely roll for her. But definitely in her debut, I imagine her being a very strong and overloaded character, because while she's able to utilize nihility characters to her advantage, and those characters you probably weren't using with many other characters right now, because in the teams you're using other Harmony characters instead of using nihility characters alongside another nihility. Now the easiest character to compare Acheron to is going to be Jing, and the unfortunate reality is that they're both AoE lightning damage dealers. Jing just being a character that has a follow-up attack in his kit, and Acheron, while not being the same in how Jing functions as a damage dealer quote unquote, she still plays relatively the same. You want to stack as much as you can before you do get out your big damage. However, just like Jing is amazing at E0, I imagine Acheron to also be really good at E0, but with more Eidolons, because well, that's kind of been the trend in Genshin Impact, so Raiden Shogun be really good at C2, I imagine Acheron to be extremely busted at E2 as well. Now, the time of you watching this video, I probably would have finished and start editing my History of Jing video. So we'll do a dedicated video on this character. I hope you look forward to that. I'll do the character as much justice as I can. There's sadly going to be one Lycone choice that reigns supreme over everything else, and that is going to be Good Night and Sleep Well. If you don't have this Lycone on Acheron, well, you probably have to invest into getting a 5-star Lycone, because there really isn't many options for the character, be surprised. But she is also able to function with a 3-star Lycone. Not having nihility characters alongside Acheron is going to be more of a deficit than not having a Lycone geared towards the character. There is other options you can use in the game. If you plan to use Acheron inside a team with Black Swan and Kafka, you can actually utilize Fermata, because all you need on the enemy in order to get the full damage passive, which increases your damage by a great amount, is the enemy having Shock or Wind Shear, which is very easy to get on turn 1 with Black Swan, and you actually get it before the fight even starts. If you plan to use Silverwolf alongside your Arcanon, you can utilize Loop, because Silverwolf has a slow on her debuffs, which means having Loop on your Acheron is going to give her a ton of more damage, because at high refinements, it is a solid weapon. So I see Acheron being the only character that is able to utilize this, because Silverwolf is a best in slot support for the character. But if you have absolutely nothing else, In the Name of the World be a very solid 5-star Lycone to use, and considering as a standard banner Lycone, you may already have this on your account. It increases the damage of the wearer by a great amount against debuffed enemies, which is everything Acheron wants from a Lycone. And even though it increased the effect hit rate of the elemental skill, which Acheron doesn't care about, it still gives her a nice attack increase, which is very good for characters in hyper carry teams. So at first glance, Acheron might seem like a character that does not have very many options when it comes to Lycones, but I promise you, you will find something on your account that will be utilized for the character, and I think that is the one saving grace about Acheron, that at first glance might seem like a con to the character. Now let's talk about her best supporters. These are the characters you're going to be using alongside Acheron. Acheron is a very interesting character how she works, because unlike other damage dealers in the game, she wants characters that apply debuffs to the enemy or nihility characters. So the first few characters that come to mind being Silverwolf and a character like Pela. Silverwolf has a ton of debuffs she can apply on the enemy in the first turn, which means Acheron is always going to have the stack she needs towards her ultimate to deal as much damage as she can possible every single turn. And if Silverwolf has before the tutorial mission starts, she's able to put defense down on the enemies most of the time, which means that having the defense down on that enemy, mostly the elite enemies, is going to give Acheron the most damage possible whenever she takes her turn. And I mentioned Pela, and Pela is no different. If you have Pela with the Resolution Shines Lycone, this is going to be very good in combination with Acheron. It actually will feel really nice if you plan to use Acheron alongside Silverwolf and Pela. Again, these are going to be your two best characters to use. And having this light cone means that the enemies will have even less defense, which means your Acheron is going to hit even harder. But you can have a character like Guinai Fen and put her in Resolution Shine's light cone just like you would on Pela, and she would perform relatively well inside the same team. Again, you just need ability characters that are able to apply debuffs on those enemies. That's why I said Kafka and Black Swan could work, even though that is a more scope point aggressive setup. You just have to make sure that Black Swan, again, will be played scope point positive, and then your support or your defensive option is going to be a character that does not use any skill points if ever. So a character like Huohuo wouldn't really be too good for the team. Although she is good, not having Huohuo E1 Eidolon 1 is going to make her a not skill point positive character. I mean, that team does ult a lot, so maybe what I'm saying isn't as necessarily true. So if your account checks all of these boxes and you have the pulls for the character, I suggest pick her up. I would definitely go for Acheron first, and then decide whether or not you want to go for a light cone, depending on what light cones you already have on your account. Because her 5-star best in slot light cone is going to provide the most value. Again, this is the Raiden Shogun XP, Raiden Mei XP of Honkai Star. You bet your butt that Hoyoverse is going to do everything in their power to milk this character. Now let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend. Now really quick, one thing I do love about 2.0 Panakani is that all of the characters have been really interesting, and Aventurine is no exception. I love Aventurine especially because of his affiliation with Topaz. She is still one of my favorite characters in the game, just because of her aesthetic and the fact that she is a enjoyer of the stock market, which is something that correlates to my life. Now, Aventurine is going to be a best in slot support for Topaz. Whenever you think of Aventurine, you think of Topaz, just because these two characters are like bread and butter. The reason why these two work so well together is that Aventurine has a follow-up attack in his kit, which means as a defensive option with follow-up attack, that is everything Topaz wants in a defensive option, because that means you're going to be pushing up the action forward of Numbi more consistently, which means Numbi will take more turns and deal more damage. Now, depending on what light cone you actually have on your Topaz, you will increase the damage of your allies, which means Aventurine, as I may have said in a previous video, can be built as a sub DPS alongside your other characters in the team party that deal damage. So a sub DPS build on Aventurine in combination with Topaz's 5-star best slot light cone will actually feel pretty nice. And again, I don't expect everyone to be of this sort, but if you do have Eidolons for your Topaz as well, you'll give a further increase of the follow-up attack crit damage, which means characters like Aventurine, who has follow-ups in their kit, is going to do even more damage. Now, real talk, you all have a free doctor ratio, which means Aventurine has even more pull value in your account. Not only do these two characters have the same element, which means you'll have more toughness breaking potential against those enemies that are weak to imaginary, but you now have a character that not only works nice with Topaz, but will work very nice with your doctor ratio. So you have one of the 3 characters required to make this team work. Now, all we need in the future is a character of the Harmony Path that has a follow-up in their kit, or is able to push up the action forward of the whole team. That would be pretty darn busted, wouldn't it? So Aventurine actually may be the character I end up rolling for in this account, and the reason why is because, again, I do enjoy Topaz as a character, and Aventurine is a character that is going to make this team even better. I am planning on building Doctor Ratio, so with that being said, that's one of the reasons why I would roll for the character. But if you are not building Doctor Ratio, you haven't built him yet, and you don't like Topaz as a character, I don't recommend rolling for Aventurine, because he can be a flexible support as a defensive option you can use for many teams, but why go through the hassle when we have other characters in this patch that are better as a universal defensive option, which I'll explain later in the video. Now, for preservation characters in general, the best light cone you can use in preservation characters as a whole, the exception is Fushuan is going to be Moment of Victory, because you increase the defense of the character like crazy, and then you give an effective rate increase. Now, Aventurine doesn't really care about the effective rate increase as much as he cares about the defense, because this will make the character much more tanky, and the shields he gives to the team will overall have more weight. And don't forget the taunt value increase. The taunt value increase is very nice to take off the load from your characters that are a lot more squishy like Topaz. Now that I did not mean intentionally. Lando's choice is always going to be very good as a 4-star alternative because you increase the taunt value of the character and you decrease the damage they take by a large amount, up to 24%. Now this light cone again is going to be the best of both worlds as being an alternative to the 5-star light cone Moment of Victory, but also being a 4-star that is a lot more achievable and still has the minimum requirements for Moment of Victory to feel like a very solid light cone choice. We did just get Destiny's Threads for Roven. Wow, try saying that 10 times fast. This light cone from the Panakani region, now you get it from the Memories of Chaos shop. Not only do you get an effect res increase, which is very good for defensive options in general, Fushuan Jeopard is no exception. Having the defense increase the damage of the character like crazy is going to be very good because again, you'll take less damage, you'll have stronger shields, and you'll give Aventurine more damage as a sub DPS in a team that is going to increase his damage anyways. Think of Topaz increasing the damage of follow-up attacks again. So to be honest, I recommend this Lycone over anything else as of right now, because if you do have Aventurine in mind as being a sub DPS character. Now, how does Aventurine compare to the Pillar of Belobog? Jeopard is a very solid preservation 5-star character, don't get me wrong. Aventurine is just going to be better because Aventurine does more over the course of the fight. Jeopard has been a very good character and he still is a very good character. But the reality of the situation is we're going on into a year at this point with Jeopard existing in the game. It's about time they make a character that is better than Jeopard at what he does, and that is AoE shield the team, have an increased taunt value, and now he does damage on top of that. So for me personally, I will be rolling for Aventurine because he is a character that I could desperately use in my Topaz follow-up attack team. But if not like me, you don't enjoy this playstyle, then I don't suggest this character because there are other defensive options that are a lot more universal than Aventurine. Now let's talk about Jingliu. This is a character everyone in Grandma's has been using since her debut, and it should be no surprise as to why. She is a very strong character, she's very overloaded, she is one of the best damage dealers in the game currently still, and she holds that tier of just being best in slot everywhere because she does so much damage to the point where you just fundamentally ignore the enemy's weakness and just the fact that she doesn't really have any cons to her pros, or her kit rather. So there really isn't much to say about Jingliu other than her just being a very strong damage dealer. I can make this very short or I can make this very long, but to save you a bunch of time, if you like Jingliu as a character, then roll for her. Acheron is going to be in the same patch. So if you value Acheron more as a damage dealer, then I suggest you go for Acheron. Or maybe you need a ice DPS on your account, then I recommend Jingliu for that. But as we reach forward into the future for Honkai Star Rail, we are receiving more characters, right? We get 2 new 5-star characters every single patch. So we will eventually get another ice character, and I imagine that to be very, very soon. So I wouldn't roll for Jingliu based on her being an ice character, but rather roll for her based on being a character that you actually enjoy overall. Now there is one cool thing we can mention about Jingliu that makes her unique compared to other damage dealers. She drains the HP of your team, which means in combination with characters like Blade, she is able to function in a dual DPS team with Blade and act as a best in slot for him. These two characters feel really good together. It is definitely one of my favorite pairing because I just like the idea of having a sub DPS in the team. So if you enjoy having a sub DPS alongside your main DPS, which brings a different playstyle overall, then I would definitely suggest picking up Jingliu because of that if you enjoy characters like Blade and other characters in the future that want to have their HP drained. And this is mostly thanks to Jingliu being a character that does not take any skill points, or at least not many skill points, away from the team versus other characters that are skill point hungry like Jing, Seal, and so on and so forth, especially QQ and Dan Hang and Baby Tulai. Those characters are a lot less flexible in their team compositions because of that. Now when it comes to Lycone choices, for Jingliu there really is only 2 options, the first being on the Fall of an Aeon, which is going to be the free-to-play option for most players, and this Lycone you get from the Herta Simulator Universe shop, which you have to save up your Herta bonds to purchase. At Refinement 5 it becomes a very strong Lycone. The other Lycone being I Shall Be My Own Sword, which is going to be best in slot for Jingliu because again it has a picture of Jingliu on it, so I imagine it would be her best in slot Lycone, but this gives the character a ton more crit damage, a nice damage increase, and it also allows Jingliu to ignore a portion of the enemy's defense, which in combination with the quantum set allows Jingliu to deal a ton of damage. I'm talking a ton of damage. Now I personally have my Jingliu on the Hunters of Glacial Forest set, which is going to be the ice set because I'm currently using my quantum set on my Seal. But if you do have an extra quantum set laying around, or let's say you bench your Seal indefinitely, then I suggest you picking up Jingliu to throw the quantum set on her because it is going to be a very nice relic set to use on the character. And then Rudolance is best in slot on the character. This hasn't changed ever since her debut. Now considering this is Jingliu's rerun, you suggest whether or not you should pick up Eidolons for the character. If you desperately enjoy Jingliu as a damage dealer, then I suggest you pick up Eidolons for the character. Do the Eidolons for Jingliu make her a grand spanking DPS, broken everywhere you go? I think E0 Jingliu is broken everywhere you go. But having Eidolons for the characters allows you to, well, not have to roll for any other damage dealer ever again, because she is going to be a mainstay in your team forever. It's like giving steroids to a bodybuilder that works out consistently. I mean, don't take steroids. That's very bad advice. And definitely don't spin in Honkai Star Rail either. That is also very bad advice. So if you are a fan of characters that are just broken and brain dead and allow you to just fundamentally ignore the, fundamentals of the game, then I can advise Jingliu to you, considering Jingliu is a character that doesn't use up as many skill points as other characters, which means she'll be flexible going forward in the future of Honkai Star Rail. As we receive more characters like Blade, her value will only go up. So I see her being a character that isn't necessarily going to be a character that gets better with hyper carry teams, but gets better when we get better sub DPS in the future. I'm thinking maybe in the future where we have another character that you can use alongside Blade, alongside your Jingliu, and then you have 3 characters that act as damage dealers, and then maybe like a buffer that heals or something. Dude, I don't know, that'd be insane, wouldn't it? Let's talk about the Traveling Merchant. It's been a long time coming for the rerun of this character. Now, I know a lot of you have been eagerly anticipating the rerun of Luocha, but I will be the first and maybe not the last to tell you that Luocha is a character I actually regret rolling for my account. I've said this in previous videos and I still stand by this. He's a character I actually don't even use anymore. Even in teams with Daniel, I don't even use him. Now with the release of Sparkle, maybe you can use him because he still gives a skill point, which is still needed in Sparkle teams. But aside from that, other defensive options just do so much more over the course of the battle than Luocha does. That's not to say that Luocha isn't a good character. He is a good character. But you have to understand that Honkai Star Rail is a game where future releases are more baked and overloaded than past releases. It was only natural that Luocha feels a little lackluster in comparison to future releases of defensive options. That's all I'm trying to say. But in teams with Daniel, he still feels best in slot because he gives that desperately needed skill point to Dan Hangabirutilnai, on top of the imaginary toughness breaking he does have in combination with Dan Hangabirutilnai. But if you're like me and you use Huohuo everywhere you go, again, you probably never used Luocha ever since the arrival of this character. And if you have Fushuan on your account as well, you also never use Luocha unless you were using him in a Daniel team. And that's because Fushuan is still a lot better, mostly in all contents. Now the reality of the situation here is that Luocha is too universal for his own good. Having a character be as universal as Luocha means that a character in the future that is slightly more niche than Luocha, which means that character does provide better buffs or better utility in those more so niche teams. Think of Fushuan in hyper carry teams, think of Fushuan in teams like Mono Quantum, and think of Huohuo in damage over time teams or dual DPS team setups. That only means that Luocha's value becomes even less because he is too universal for his own good. But on the contrary of that, that also means that he is a character that is going to be valuable no matter what team comp you put him in. Now when it comes to Lycone choices, quid pro quo on a fast Luocha is going to give energy to the team. And if you want Luocha to be more tanky, Time Waits for No One is a good option on the character. You increase the character's HP like crazy, the outgoing healing, and then you give a damage increase to a random ally that is percentage of the healing over the course of the passive. Now the passive isn't strong because it was nerfed from the CBT to the launch of the game, but it is still a Lycone all things considered. Perfect timing is going to be very good on Luocha because it increases his effect resistance by a nice amount, his outgoing healing, based on the amount of effect resistance he has, which in combination with the effect resist he has in his traces to allow him to resist crowd control effects, is going to allow Luocha to never be CC'd ever. Post-up conversation is good on Luocha just like it is on any other abundance character because it increases the energy regeneration rate of that character, which means that character is able to get their ultimate faster, which means for Luocha that means more uptime on toughness breaking potential in AoE scenarios, and it also means Luocha can't be put on the sub DPS build because you are ulting more consistently, and lastly, you are getting more healing out on the field because you are proccing your Abyss Flower passive more consistently. And then you increase the outgoing healing whenever you use ultimate, which is useless on Luocha, but the energy regeneration rate is too good to pass up. So in my honest opinion, Abundance 5-star Lycones are the worst Lycones in the game because they don't really do too much to boost up the character of that path. I want to see Abundance Lycones become a lot better in the future, whether that is giving better buffs of some sort, because other Lycones, like for instance Fushuan's Lycone, does so much more for the character of the team versus a character that is more geared towards healing the team. It's so weird, man. I don't know what Hoyoverse is cooking with Abundance Lycones in general. But that also means that you never have to worry about rolling for abundance light cones because the 4 stars and even 3-star light cones are really good for the characters, right? You may already have Bailu in your account, and Bailu to a lot of people might seem like one of the worst characters in the game. But I swear to you, Bailu is an amazing character in combination with Bronya. That's because Bronya has a cleanse that the character doesn't have in her kit. And she has a ton of damage mitigation. She has a revive. She's the only character in the game that can revive without Eidolons. And she has a ton of healing for the team while being skill point positive. So when combination with Bronya, these two become godlike for hypercarry teams. This is still a very nice combination in Honkai style, and because of this, you don't need Luocha if you already have these characters on your account. And that's all I'm gonna say. Dual DPS teams are no exception either. You just have to make sure that you are using Bronya instead of Ruan Mei. Ruan Mei is going to be the best bang for your buck in your dual DPS setups with like Jingliu for instance and Bailu and stuff like that. But Bronya just gives a cleanse that you need to have in order to use Bailu to her full potential. So there you have it. So you probably noticed in my should you pull videos, I don't talk about the relics you need for defensive options or buffer characters because the reality of the situation is you should probably throw them on rainbow sets because they need stats more than anything else. They need speed. Every character needs speed, right? And whether or not they're a character that is a defensive option, then they need effect resistance, that they're Bronya or Sparkle, effect resistance, crit damage, right? So they are a lot more universal in how they can be built with relics. So I never really needed to talk about what relic set you can use on a character because you probably, listen, farming relics in Honkai Star is already hard. You probably shouldn't be over-investing into relics or characters that are not your damage dealers. That's all I'm going to say. But as it goes, or as it stands for characters you should pull in this patch as a, let's say, free-to-play player, right? Let's say you're a free-to-play player and you only have enough Jades for one character this whole patch, and you have none of the characters already. You just want to know which character is going to be the best bang for your buck. I would suggest you to go for the new toy, and that's Acheron. She's going to be an amazing damage dealer, and she's going to be refreshing as a character with a different playstyle overall. So if you have some of those Nihility characters, Payla with the Resolution Shines Light Cone, Gwynethon also with the Resolution Light Cone, right? Or you have Silverwolf on your account, then I suggest going for Acheron. But again, that's only if you have some of those options. With that being said, any other character this patch is also a nice pool. Every character here is pretty solid, right? Luocha for your day and Hungry between 9 teams. Jingliu as a standalone character, right? Damage dealer alongside Bronya. Really good combination. Sparkle is also really good with Jingliu now. And Aventurine, if you are a fan of Topaz and the follow-up playstyle in general. Who am I going to pull for? Definitely Aventurine. That's most likely going to be my pool here unless I end up going for every character, right? Just for video purposes. Thank you for watching and have a nice rest of your day. Good luck with your pools. Peace.